Welcome to How to Read Difficult Texts. This video presentation supports the political science course, Social Contract Theory. In this course, we read political classics that often have long sentences, complicated sentences, they're packed with information, and many technical and sometimes archaic terms. We're going to give you a set of 5 tips for dealing with those challenges and get some practice by applying them to an important text for the course, Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan. These readings are the core material you're responsible for in social contract theory. It's essential to understand and engage with them fully. It will help your papers and your tests. In turn, this better comprehension can improve your final grade. So we're going to start at the very beginning of Leviathan with the introduction and its first paragraph. This is where Hobbes sets his agenda for the book, and understanding it is key. We're pulling out the first sentence beginning with nature and analyzing it. But first, the very first tip, read with care. It's essential that you read slowly in order to understand and reflect on the text. We are doing that now together in this video with this first sentence. Here it is. And it's quite a sentence. Nature, the art whereby God hath made and governs the world, is by the art of man, as in many other things, so in this also imitated, that it can make an artificial animal. Second tip, with a sentence like this, you need to break it down to understand it. If it's complicated, break it into its parts, and that'll make it easy to build them up later. We've divided it into parts with these hash marks. So far, so good. Part of breaking it down is also taking out what is not essential here. Anything between parentheses, between commas, or a clause, they're highlighted in green here. You can come back to them later. Another part of breaking a sentence down to make it more understandable then is not just to shorten it, but find the subject and the verb, the main doer and thing done, in order to create a clear, direct sentence. The subject then is the art of man, and the verb is to imitate. The object being nature. Now, the art of man refers to skill, in this case, in Hobbes' usage, not to an art object like a painting or sculpture, but man's skill. Remember, you can't do this breaking down or chunking through every sentence in the work, but it's important to get some practice where you're really stumped, and then you'll understand things better later. So we've broken the sentence down to something that sounds more familiar to modern ears and is shorter in 2 sentences. The art of man imitates nature. It can make an artificial animal. So far, so good. We've decoded the sentence, have some idea what the words mean together, but what does it really mean? What does Hobbes mean by this sentence? Well, tip number 3, you have to find key ideas throughout the text, and we'll look for them in this paragraph. What is the main subject of the book? Where does the author state this subject clearly and directly? Bear that in mind, and then the details will fall into place. Let's go back to the nature sentence. There's a very puzzling idea, which we need to find more references to understand what Hobbes really means. Artificial animal. What does Hobbes intend by this? And what does it have to do with this work? Well, there are clues in this paragraph and throughout. Numerous references to art or skill. Hobbes actually defines artificial animal and lets on what he really means. He's talking about an automaton, as he calls it, or machine, something that has motion and seems to have a purpose, but is not biologically alive. It's something that man designs and makes. Here's the definition. the art of man imitates nature. It can make an artificial animal. Hobbes echoes that, the word art and skill, in his statement about what his book is about. The Leviathan, or commonwealth, is created by art. That is a key idea. Now, along with key ideas are words. Look for key terms that recur. There are ideas behind them. Try to commit them to memory. We've already identified the idea of art as skill. There are a number of references to art: artificial, artificer, somebody who has that skill, and the related automaton. Something made by man using his reason and imagination for a given purpose. This supports the key idea that Hobbes has put forward in this book, which will now feature, that the commonwealth is man-made. That is, man can make the political structure or political society that he desires according to his reason. He can see the need for it by reason and construct it according to reason. Whereas nature is made by God, no political form is necessarily given. We can make it if we see the right way to make it and the right reasons. Proving that is Hobbes' purpose in his entire work. And finally, tip number 5, mark what you read. You've done some work here. You have to save your work. Mark it on paper, ideally. Mark what you've noticed and set aside so that you can review it later and don't have to reread everything at the point when you're studying for your test or writing your final or writing your paper. Save any sample revised or diagram sentences, which we've done here. Now you'll have the PowerPoint, the underlying PowerPoint that we've used here that's available, and we've not only marked up this paragraph for you, but embedded comments in the paragraph that remind you what we've done with these different parts on paper. Back to the slideshow. So to recap, pace yourself, read slowly to understand what you're reading. Break down what is complex. Simple is not bad. We all have to think of simple parts to build up the complex ideas and gain facility with them. Keep focused on what is important. You'll hear that in the lectures, throughout the readings, and in the context of any sentences you're reading. Make note of what's important so that you can come back later. Well, that concludes our presentation. We appreciate your feedback, and remember, there are various materials, including practice materials and this basic PowerPoint for your review later.